Wrestling fans, are you ready? For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
And now, please welcome at this time your hosts, Graham GSM Matthews and RJ Marceau. You're listening to the next era of wrestling radio. This is WrestleRant Radio.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WrestleRant Radio here today for Thursday, November 14th, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. New episodes available every single Thursday on WrestleRant.com, WrestleRantRadio.com. Rate, review, subscribe. All the support is greatly appreciated. Speaking of support, you can support the show, support the brand, support me and everything that I do by checking out the shirt store, our all-new Pro Wrestling Tees store over at ProWrestlingTees.com/WrestleRant. We got two designs available, the basic WrestleRant design and the Halloween design from a couple of weeks ago. Check those out. A potential Christmas design on the way as well as a WrestleRant Radio shirt, so check those out. Buy a shirt, support the brand. Like I said, all the support is greatly appreciated. Before we get going with Mr. Marceau in a little bit, talking all things War Games, and I do have a WarGames rant on tap today. I am not happy about the men's match being expanded to 5-on-5 apparently. A women's War Games match even happening. I think that is honestly kind of ridiculous. Nothing against the talent themselves. I just think the idea of doing a women's War Games match this year, as I've said several times on this channel, on this show, and in various places, on Twitter as well, in the last couple of weeks just isn't necessary this year. But I'm going to save that for a little bit later on with Mr. Marceau. We have other, news items to discuss momentarily. Before any of that, though, before I welcome him on, I do want to discuss Dynamite. AEW Dynamite from Wednesday, November 13th in Bridgeport, Connecticut, actually. Not too far from where I am, probably about 45 minutes to an hour, probably closer to 45 minutes. The last and only time I have been to an AEW show in Bridgeport at that arena, the Total Mortgage Arena, whatever it's called now. It used to be the old Sound Tigers Arena. I think they still play there. I could be mistaken. But the first and last and only AEW show I've been to in that building was 2.5 years ago, a February 2022 edition of Dynamite. I think that was the first time they ever came to Connecticut, actually. I had been to a couple Dynamites before that, in Boston, which were fun, but they came to Connecticut in 2022, and it was a really fun show. That was in the middle of like the Jericho Eddie Kingston program, and that was back when it was still like a really, really fun feud. They were doing Punk and MJF at that point. That was a great segment. I remember that was the whole MJF promo where he kind of like broke down crying, talking about his past. That happened on that Bridgeport Dynamite 2.5 years ago. They had a tag team battle royal. I think Buddy Matthews debuted on that show, I'm pretty sure. It was a pretty fun show. Last night's show in Bridgeport, the November 13th, 2024 edition, was anything but. This was a fucking bore of a show. It was a fine show for what it was, but more so the crowd reaction. I remember, and I was there at that point, so it may have come across differently on TV. The crowd reaction in person, that first Dynamite I went to in Bridgeport 2.5 years ago, was, from what I can recall, a lot louder. They were in Bridgeport again like 6 months later for another Dynamite. I did not go to that one. That was after the whole Brawl Out thing. The Dynamite product at that point wasn't really overly exciting. It was probably more interesting then than it is now, honestly. But I still didn't really opt to go to that one. I think I went to SmackDown like 2 days later. It would have been a lot. And I'll be going to a lot of shows coming up soon anyway, so I'm thinking, as far as this Dynamite goes, no thanks. And I was just at Collision actually in Springfield, Mass. 2 months ago. That was a fine show. It was Collision, but it was fine for what it was. Even that, going to that show in person was more enjoyable than whatever that show was last night. And the effort was there. I think they've done a decent job of coming together, of coming up with a nice card on paper for Full Gear. On paper, I think it's a pretty strong show. I think Moxley and Orange Cassidy, as they proved last year at Full Gear and at All Out last year, they're going to have a really good match for the AEW World Championship. We're going to be getting Mercedes Moné and Chris Statlander for the TBS Championship. I don't know if Mariah May is defending on that show. I know she's defending, I think again on Saturday, actually, this Saturday on Collision, against Anna Jay for the AEW Women's World Championship. They might do her and Mina Shirakawa, but that would have to come together pretty quickly considering Mina had just come back. She's just returning to TV now, so probably not. But my point is that they're doing a pretty strong lineup for that show on Full Gear next Saturday. I'll have my full predictions of the pay-per-view here in the show next week, most likely. But that show last night, that crowd did not give a fuck. And I think their first mistake, the company's first mistake was running that building to begin with. I mean, they definitely had a higher attendance. Without even looking at the numbers, I can tell you they did a better number 2.5 years ago than they did for this show last night. It's not like a big arena by any means. I'm sure it's smaller than the Hartford Arena, the XL Center. They had run that only once, about a year ago, in the summer of 2023, for a Collision. One of the first few Collisions they had done. That was a really fun show. That had a great crowd, I thought. The Bridgeport crowds, even for WWE, are typically terrible. But, you know, in the Bridgeport area itself is a fucking dump compared to Hartford, compared to Mohegan Sun, which they also go to in Uncasville, Connecticut. That's a great arena. Free parking, too, which is nice. But the actual area itself isn't bad. Even Hartford, which isn't a great area, is a better and easier area to get to, better parking situation. Bridgeport is just an absolute fucking dump. If you live closer to like the New York area and it's right off the highway, I mean, yeah, it's convenient in that respect, but the parking is always a disaster. It takes you a million years to get in there, get out of there, at least from my own experience. Maybe I just don't know how to drive, I guess, but from my own experiences, which there are many, in going there, it has always been awful. So that was my first indicator, like, I'm not going to Dynamite in Bridgeport, but after watching the show, I'm even more glad I was not there. This was a pretty ho-hum show, but like the aura around the product right now is just at an all-time low. And it's amazing too, because I know they're going to go out there next weekend with Full Gear and have a great show. Wrestle Dream was really good. All In especially, but All In and All Out were both great shows. Forbidden Door was a really good show. Double or Nothing this year was a really good show. The pay-per-views are consistently great. They really haven't had a bad pay-per-view all year, and they've had quite a few. Dating back to Revolution in March. I think that was the first one of 2024 for AEW. But yeah, just when you look at this card coming up, it has potential. And the build has been fine. Like, they've confirmed most of the card well in advance. The pay-per-view's not for another, 2 weeks. I think, well, it's next Saturday. So really, it's in, 9 days. 9 days! But, the build, as far as, the energy around these shows, is just not fucking good. They had that one really good show that I talked about 2 weeks ago, the Fright Night edition, the Halloween week episode. That was really, really good. Almost every other show they have done, I mean, not even since then, that was 2 weeks ago, but even before that, has just had this sense of stagnancy around it. This dullness, where the crowds just do not care. This crowd more than any other. There was one really embarrassing moment on this show, after Swerve beat Lio Rush. And what was a fun match for as long as it lasted? You knew Lio Rush wasn't going to win. But the match for what it was enjoyable. After the match, Swerve had called out the Hurt Syndicate, and he mistakenly referred to the city as Stamford. And that crowd did not forget. So when MVP started cutting his promo when he came out, they just completely overwrote. And it wasn't even MVP's fault, so he kind of got the brunt of it, which sucked. They just did not give a shit about what he was saying. They just chanted over him the entire time saying, "This is Bridgeport." And then when they proceeded to beat down Swerve and Prince Nana in the ring, they continued to chant, "Bridgeport, Bridgeport." Now, obviously, the fans themselves should have moved on from it. It's not that big of a deal. But it was an embarrassing fucking moment. That was one of the only things they chanted for the entire show was their own fucking city. Everything else on the show, whether it was a match or a promo, this crowd did not care. They were dead silent during the Jon Moxley promo. They were dead silent during a majority of the matches, which were well wrestled. They were well-worked matches, plenty of well-worked matches on this show. I thought the opening match was probably the best part of the entire show, honestly, with Adam Page and Christian Cage beating Juice Robinson and Jay White. But everything else, it was just does this crowd even have a pulse? The Roderick Strong-Lance Archer match, it was a Falls Count Anywhere match. Strong won. Adam Cole lost his match on the show to Konosuke Takeshita. It was a non-title match, the AEW International Champion. And I thought someone would interfere to cost Cole the match. And it was a really good match. Crowd did not give a shit. Takeshita instead just cheated, and that was it for Cole. Cole is not getting his hands on MJF in Full Gear, and honestly, I like that idea more, that we're getting, like, it's not even like a rush into MJF Adam Cole thing. At this point, it's really hard to care because they butchered that entire feud storyline. It's hard to care, but picking up where they left off with those two, it makes sense to a certain degree, even though the roles are reversed now, but whatever. It makes sense to do this match over MJF and Adam Cole and Roderick Strong. Yes, you could have just done Adam Cole versus MJF straight up, but clearly they're just going to save that for like World's End, which is where this, not where the feud began, but that was when Adam Cole turned on MJF a year ago. It was at that pay-per-view in late December of 2023. So running it back on that show a year later makes sense. You get MJF and Roderick Strong out of the way. But my question is this, and I was thinking about this well before Dynamite on Wednesday. If Roderick Strong also wants to get his hands on MJF, which he does, obviously, the whole point of this, like, oh, you got to win 3 matches thing was to get their hands on MJF. Okay, whatever. Why wouldn't he have done that when Adam Cole was not there? MJF beat the shit out of Adam Cole back at Double or Nothing. They both returned on that same show, a lot like they both returned at WrestleDream. They both returned on that show. And Cole wasn't cleared to compete at that point, but MJF laid him out, and that seemed to be the end of that whole devil crap. The Undisputed Kingdom devil nonsense. And then they moved on from it before picking up right where they left off just recently on the show, which is fine. But it would have been fine if it was just Cole and MJF straight up. To drag it out anymore, honestly, like I know I said it's the 1-year anniversary at World's End of the devil angle and Cole turning on MJF. Who gives a shit? Honestly, at this point, like, they have been intertwined since the early summer of 2023, which is when Cole first stated he wanted the championship. They became partners instead. This is a 1.5 long storyline, and it lost its juice a very long time ago. So to drag it out any further, honestly, like, who can possibly give a shit? In MJF and Strong, like, they haven't done that match yet. I'm sure it will be a good match. It'll give MJF a win. Cool. The problem is, though, is that, like I was saying a moment ago, why wouldn't he have just gone after MJF when Cole was gone? MJF turned on Cole back at Double or Nothing, not turned on him, but like he came back and beat up Cole back at Double or Nothing. That is Roderick Strong's friend. I know Roddy was the international champion at that point, or had just lost the championship, or was doing whatever else. I think he had lost the championship on that show to Will Ospreay, I'm pretty sure. It was a Double or Nothing. But, like, why wouldn't he have gone after MJF right after that? When Cole was out, Strong was then a heel, and MJF was a babyface. The roles are reversed now. But it's just odd that Strong would all of a sudden be bothered by MJF and want to get his hands on him now, as opposed to 6 months ago, when they've had an issue with him since late last year. That, to me, just doesn't make any sense. So the Roderick Strong-Lance Archer match was fine. I didn't give a fuck. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, could anyone honestly possibly care? It's impossible to care. But the Konosuke-Takeshita match and Adam Cole match, I thought that was good. Another glaring issue with AEW right now is this whole Death Riders hostile takeover of AEW. They were advertising going into Dynamite last night that Jon Moxley would be seizing the Superstation at TBS. What the fuck that even means, I don't know. And he didn't really do anything. Like, they came out, they attacked JD Drake. Again, who gives a shit? Or at least Claudio did. Moxley walked to the ring, did one of his cryptic promos. Orange Cassidy interrupted. They built towards their match at Full Gear, and that was it. The Death Riders have now been around for over 2 months. And we still do not have any sort of explanation for what they're here for, what they're doing, if there's a higher power, why is the belt in a fucking briefcase. I'm sure they'll get around to it at some point, but like what they're giving us in the meantime is not interesting. The Orange Cassidy kind of level up to the main event scene is fine. As long as he's not winning, I don't really need to see Orange Cassidy as the AEW World Champion, at least not at this point. I don't think he's going to beat Moxley anyway. I think it's probably going to be Darby Allin a little bit down the road. Maybe at World's End, probably a little bit farther than that. But what they're doing in the meantime with these guys is just not interesting. He's out there cutting the same promos every week. Just a whole lot of just fucking nothing. He's just not saying anything of note or any real interest or significance of any real meaning. They're just promos. Cassidy, I think, is cutting the better promos of the two because he's kind of representing the heart and soul of AEW. He's also been there since day one for the most part. So I kind of like his role in this rivalry a lot more than Moxley's, who it's refreshing to see work as a heel for a change in AEW. but like what they're giving him to work with or what he wants to work with, I'm not really sure what the creative process is there, is not good. It is not interesting. This crowd did not give a shit about what Jon Moxley had to say. And then in the rest of the show, we had a Britt Baker-Penelope Ford match. Fine, but again, who cares? Baker's not remotely as over as she once was. Penelope Ford is already back to being a stepping stone. I kind of figured that even before the feud during the feud with Jamie Hayter, before that was even over. And now that it's over, I'm even more sure of that than I was before, which is why I did not care about that feud, because I knew it would go right back to Penelope Ford being in the same role that she was in previously. And sure enough, that's exactly what fucking happened. Britt Baker and her had a match. It was competitive. Wasn't interesting. The crowd didn't give a fuck. Britt Baker won, and that was it. Serena Deeb did come out, so they're clearly building to Britt Baker and Serena Deeb 2. They had a match back at the 5-year anniversary episode of Dynamite last month. That was actually a very good match. But I don't know, that's not really interesting to me. And one of the only other highlights on the show is the Kings of the Black Throne beating FTR to qualify for that Fatal 4-Way match at Full Gear, where the AEW World Tag Team titles will be on the line. So they're slowly rebuilding the tag team division. That's also nice to see. It's going to be Private Party, it's going to be the Outrunners, and it's going to be the Kings of the Black Throne. There's also one more contenders match to go. I don't know who the qualifier or what the qualifying match is or who's involved. I forget. But we do know it will be Private Party, the Outrunners as of last Saturday's Collision, and Kings of the Black Throne, which is, Brody King and Malachi Black, representing House of Black as of last night's Dynamite. So they've officially qualified as well. That'll be a fun match, but that was one of the only highlights of Dynamite last night was that qualifying match closing out the show. It was well wrestled and whatnot, but the rest of the show didn't really have a whole lot to get truly invested in. They can have good matches, but we're getting to the point where these crowds don't even care about said matches, because a lot of these matches don't really mean anything. And you can kind of get away with that with Rampage, which who gives a shit about Rampage at this point anyway. Collision, that's a filler show at this point too. But Dynamite is their flagship. At the very least, Dynamite should feel must-see. It should feel like it's worthwhile. It should feel like it's worth watching. Most weeks it's not. I have not caught Dynamite live in a while. I think I watched the New York one live, or close to live, the Grand Slam show in late September. The anniversary show I did watch live, and the Halloween one a couple of weeks ago. Like those all felt like more special shows. The other average Dynamites do not, whereas at one point they did. And it's at a point now where I don't even really feel like I don't even really feel the urge to attend. Even if it wasn't in a shithole like Bridgeport, if it was at Mohegan Sun or Hartford here in Connecticut, I probably would have gone. But unless the card stands out to me where I know it's going to be not like a massive show, but I watched this show specifically and I say to myself, I missed absolutely nothing. Stuff did happen. It wasn't a completely inconsequential show, but the crowds, and not only just this one in Bridgeport, especially this one, but these crowds do not care for a reason. They need to be given more of a reason to care about the product. There just isn't really a whole lot right now worth watching from week to week in AEW. It's almost becoming a pay-per-view product. You can almost make that argument with NXT back in the day. The weekly NXTs on the network in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. You probably can't name me this one episode of NXT was so amazing. It was a one-and-done show, a 1-hour show. The actual shows themselves were enjoyable, but they weren't a lot of the times must-see. I mean, it wasn't even TV. It was on the fucking network. But this is a much bigger deal. This airs on TV. It's a much bigger audience than what NXT had back at that point. I believe so. I could be wrong. I'm not exactly sure. It might be comparable numbers. I don't know. Based on what Dynamite's doing in the ratings right now. And they have been for the last couple of months. But it's a much bigger platform, so it's not even comparable. You need to make these shows worthwhile. You need to give them a reason to want to tune in, care about these shows. And my point was that NXT at that point, again, I know a lot of people back in those days, and it's a completely different product. A lot of people did not watch NXT TV. They would just kind of catch up quickly before the takeovers and watch the takeovers. NXT at that point was largely a takeover-based product. People knew when they tuned into the takeovers, whether they watched NXT TV or not, the takeovers would be entertaining, worthwhile, satisfying, enjoyable, whatever. And they would always be excellent. That's what AEW has kind of become, where the pay-per-views are awesome most of the time, and worthwhile, and worth checking out. Some not so much, but most of them are, to their credit. But the weekly TVs, which should be important in building these shows up and making me want to care about these shows, should be better, and currently it's just not. So AEW is a very big problem on their hands right now with a lot of different things. But the bigger issue is like running bigger buildings. Stuff like that is fucking stupid. The fact that AEW was outdrawn by NXT on their own night last week. I know NXT was an ECW arena show, like it was a special show, and it wasn't that special. Like it was a very fun show, but Dynamite really should be beating the competition on their own fucking night. That is also embarrassing. The ratings are lower than they've ever been. The attendance is awful. They've got a very big problem on their hands. It's not like a terrible product by any means. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the product is unbearable. Some stuff they do is unbearable. You could say the same thing with WWE, though. It's just that I want to see this company succeed. I want to see the show succeed. I want to feel like I'm missing something by not watching the shows live. I want to feel like I should be watching the shows live. Currently, I don't get that vibe at all. But we know the pay-per-views are going to be great, so I guess that's something to hang your hat on. But the shows do need a lot of work and improvement. But we will get to my full gear predictions next week here on the show. That's going to be next Saturday. And it's just a bummer that Dynamite is so fucking depressing right now. Like, watching that show on Wednesday was a depressing experience. Or watching it today, rather, on Thursday. Like I said, I don't watch the shows live. I go do other shit. I don't really feel like I'm missing anything, so I just watch the shows after the fact. It was fucking depressing watching that show. For a show that at one point felt like must-see TV, it was the coolest thing going in wrestling. It's not like the weakest show by any means of the week. Like, there's far worse shows I watch in wrestling every week than Dynamite. Like, Rampage and Collision are basically, like, not bad. They're just completely a waste of time. Dynamite at least has worthwhile stuff on it, but the shows themselves do not feel important, and a lot of the times it's just fucking depressing. So, anyway, like I said, full gear predictions next week here on the show. I'll probably start the show with that, so keep an eye and ear out for that. But until then, though, we got Mr. Marceau joining me to talk all things War Games and some other news and notes as well. But I do, specifically on the War Games front, have a lot to complain about that I've been saving for today specifically. Mr. Marceau, brother, what's going on?
I was doing good until I heard the crying coming. I've seen you on Twitter, the tears. I've been seeing the tears. I was waiting for this day so I could listen to them, like the flesh out of the tears, but I knew this was coming. So I'm doing good, though, besides that.
Well, listen, I could cry anytime, any place, anywhere, but I specifically am choosing today because I know you will put me in my place by telling me to stop complaining like a baby, but we're going to get into it, whether my complaints and rants are justified here today. But just on a lighter note, I do want to start with this before we get going. I got to get your 2 cents on two different things before we get to the negative, in my opinion. Well, first of all, I mean, this really only appeals to us, but I do want to mention it because we're talking, and we mentioned it earlier before we hit record here. NXT is headed back to the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, and it's worth mentioning, too, because we just discussed last week the NXT ECW Arena show and how they should go on the road like every couple of months, once a month, whatever. They were in Chicago and the St. Louis, shows they did in early October for their first 2 CW episodes. They did the ECW Arena show last week, and I'm thinking, they'll probably go back on the road again for an episode of NXT TV in like January or something. They're going back on the road on December 17th. They have deadline, I think, before that. But they're going to be in Lowell Memorial Auditorium. And they've ran Lowell before for NXT. They were there last year for the Battleground show that we all went to, which was a fun time. But that was like the UMass, like the fucking college arena, whatever it is, right? That wasn't that arena.
Yeah, it was at UMass Lowell, their arena.
Yeah, okay, so separate arena, obviously bigger. The Lowell Memorial Auditorium, to me, is like the equivalent. It's like the Massachusetts equivalent of like the Hammerstein Ballroom, though they have not ever run in NXT, which they should at some point. I feel like, I think I heard Final Battle might be headed back there next month. But yeah, they're headed to Lowell Memorial Auditorium for NXT TV December 17th. First of all, I'm thinking we gotta fucking go. Second of all, your immediate reaction to NXT hitting the road again, and it's a place so close to home that we've been to for a few different shows over the years for NXT.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. I feel like they do need to get out of like Florida sometimes. I think we discussed probably like maybe once a quarter or once every month, just because when you go into the same NXT crowd every week, I mean, they're going to get the same reactions, and you need to get out of your like comfort zone a little bit. So I think besides the Coconut Loop, hitting a different city every month is great. And we've been to a few NXT house shows in Lowell. I mean, my shoulder's still not repaired from when Samoa Joe beat Finn Balor for the NXT title, but I mean, I think it's a nice little arena, like you said. It's like the Lowell, like it's like the Massachusetts version of the Hammerstein Ballroom. It's small, but like you packed it in there. It's a nice little setting. So I like that they're going back there. Hopefully Sean doesn't lose a smile again, and should be a fun night.
Plus, they have that little pizza place that we went to. Not the time where we saw Samoa Joe win the NXT Championship at that house show, which I know your shoulder's still recovering from 8 years later. But we went there, for another house show I mentioned. Not as nearly as memorable, but it was still a good time. About a year and a half later. Do you remember that little? I don't think it was a pizza place. I think it was a pizza place. It was like a fucking diner place.
Yeah, it was. It was like a mom and pop shop.
Yeah. So I might have to hit up that place again. That is actually the day after. I kind of forgot about this. Raw's going to be in Boston, your neck of the woods, the day before. So they're hitting Boston and Lowell back to back. And I know John Cena, I know they announced yesterday that he's going to be in the Royal Rumble match. I assume that we'll probably see him back on WWE TV on the first Raw on Netflix on January 6th, I think it is. I wouldn't be surprised. But do you think we could see John Cena, one of those NXT? I mean, obviously Raw's in Boston, so that would make more sense. But like, for the NXT Chicago show, they brought in Punk to serve as a special guest referee. For the St. Louis show, it was headlined by Javon Evans and Randy Orton. And then the ECW Arena show, they had the Dudley Boys on there, Rob Van Dam, among others. Do you think they could do something similar in Lowell? I just don't know. I mean, obviously, I know you mentioned like the Shawn Michaels lost his smile thing happened in that building, but he runs NXT, so him appearing wouldn't really be that big of a deal because he's there most of the time anyway. I don't know what else they would book as an attraction if they want one on that show, unless they're just going to fully focus on the current roster, not bring in someone to kind of help sell tickets, like a John Cena or someone like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a small enough arena that you don't, like, totally need Cena. I mean, I think that'd be great. I think it would be, like, a huge pop. Obviously, like I said, the Lowell Memorial Auditorium is very small, so, like, having John Cena in that environment just sounds crazy just thinking out loud. But I don't think they really need like a big star. I think like you said, Mick, I know Kofi's kind of local, so maybe like him, but like I don't think you're gonna need like it's not like a big enough arena that I think you need like a big star to help. Neither is the ECW arena, but like that was kind of more like an ECW centric show, so you kind of needed those people.
Yeah.
With Punk, I think it was at a big arena. I know Randy, they downsized it a little bit, but I mean it'd be a sick surprise, but. I mean, I think the last time Cena was in front of fans like that, he was like in the Louisville Gardens or he was in OVW or something.
I mean, he did appear in NXT at the Performance Center last year, but yeah, and in like an actual building beyond that, probably since he was in OVW, if I had to take a guess. Yeah, I mean, it's smart though, because I think they made the mistake last month of booking like NBA arenas. I mean, the Allstate Arena is not the other one, the United Center. That the Bulls play at, but it's still a pretty big arena in Chicago, and we were packed in there like sardines for Money in the Bank 2018. We've made our way around for a lot of these arenas. St. Louis, like you said, they had to downsize because they could not sell the bigger arena, which was an NBA arena, and they had to downsize and ended up being a great fucking venue. And the ECW arena is already intimate anyway. This is another intimate atmosphere. I think if this was NXT a couple of years ago, they would have run like a takeover at the TD Garden. But I think it's smarter that they're running smaller arenas. I feel like AEW could benefit from doing something similar and not always trying to run like the Garden or these bigger arenas where they can only fit in like, 1,000 or 2 people, 2,000 or 3,000 people. And then it looks terrible on TV because they didn't fill it out.
No, I think these smaller, like you said, I think for NXT it's the better approach. I think the smaller, more intimate arenas, even though it's not as many people, I feel like you can shoot it tighter so it looks like there's like a lot of people there, even though the arena's not that big. Mm-hmm. And it just, I don't know, like putting 2,000 people in a 2,000 seat venue and then loud, like I think that's these places are acoustically set up for the noise to be at, like if people are going nuts with this, like that's I think the problem with AEW. They're running big NBA arenas with a couple thousand people and it's supposed to fit 18,000 or 20,000, and it's like they have to like kind of like pipe and drape a lot off, and it just like the noise isn't there because it's not like acoustically meant for that little amount of people. So I think I like it. Like you said, that venue that they ran in St. Louis was sick. I really like that one.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, same kind of thing, very smaller and very intimate, and you packed it out like you'd feel like a bigger crowd.
Yeah, I mean, when we went there for that NXT, that first one, I mean, the second one too, but I remember specifically the first one. I mean, you could see videos of it because they took video of that Samoa Joe title win from 2016, but they packed it out pretty well. Like, where we sat on the ground, looked great. And then you also have like the rafters you can sit up there. It's not really that big. I don't even know what the attendance size is, but it's small enough to where they could definitely obviously sell it out, I would imagine. I would be shocked if they didn't. And it just looks cool on TV because it is a smaller atmosphere, more intimate atmosphere, and the crowd reactions are louder because it's a smaller building. So I think AEW would benefit from doing something similar. I know they want to go bigger like, we were talking about, but I just feel like more stuff like this makes the product look better, sound better. And like you said, that St. Louis one specifically looked great. I think it was called The Factory, I think. So if NXT could do this more sort of stuff, not running on the road every week, I don't think that's sustainable. But I think doing it once a month, like we said last week, would be a good idea, and that's exactly what they're doing. Piggybacking off of their main roster, and that's clearly what they're doing here, too. Because like when they went to the ECW arena, I think I want to say they were nearby in Philly anyway for a Raw or SmackDown. Like I said, I know
they at Wilkes-Barre?
They probably were. I just feel like it's probably...
I think they were either Scranton or Wilkes-Barre. They were in Pennsylvania, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think it's probably just easier for them to move like through their production trucks and stuff and to use the same trucks that they use for Raw and SmackDown to use it for NXT so they don't have to do their own independent shit. I'm just imagining that's probably why they're doing it. I did see actually on a related note talking about Raw the night before in Boston. Since like the holidays are coming up, like they pre-taped Raw next week, this week, so they have the...
I hate that.
Hey, Thanksgiving week off for the talent. That's great. But you want live shows.
I get it. No, well, Thanksgiving's not next week.
Oh, yeah, it's not. Then why do they do that, then? That's a good question.
Thanksgiving's the last Thursday of the month, so it's 2 weeks. Yeah, I don't know. I saw that. Yeah. Like, of course, I saw things on Twitter, and I'm like, why are they taping Raw again? I don't know. I mean, like you said, maybe, honestly, realistically, it's probably just cheaper, but, like, I can't stand the spoilers. It's kind of annoying.
Well, no, I mean, listen, I'm totally fine if they want to give more, if they want to give more time off for the talent, then that's totally fine. But I honestly totally forgot about that because Thanksgiving's usually a lot sooner, so I'm thinking, wait. Now that you say that, I'm thinking, wait, why is it next week? Then that means they do have to work Thanksgiving week. They're going to be working the day after Thanksgiving in 2 weeks. I don't know. That doesn't make much sense, actually, now that you mention that. But they're going to be doing that again. What I was going to say was they're doing it. They did it for next week, and they're going to be doing it with SmackDown this Friday. They're doing that with the Raw in Boston as well. Since it's a 2-hour show, it's not as, like, kill me, like you're sitting through 6 hours of wrestling. It's only 4 hours, and probably less than that, actually, if you don't count commercials and shit. They're doing that with the Raw in Boston. They're taping the week after, the Christmas week one, in Boston, so they're actually doing a double taping that night too. And if there's a SmackDown in Hartford a couple of days before the Boston one that we might go to, and they're doing a double taping of SmackDown that week, so it's kind of the same thing, I guess.
Do you have your suit ready, or
if they run it back, if they run back the wedding, then I got my suit ready for the Raw taping and the SmackDown taping. I guess we'll see. I gotta
get mine from the cleaners though.
You know what? Honestly, wouldn't be a much of a shock to see if they did a Liv Morgan Dominic Mysterio wedding on the show, since they're in a relationship anyway on Raw right now. It's possible.
I mean, if that's the case, I'll be there.
And Liv Morgan was involved in the last wedding when she interrupted Bobby Lashley and Lana. So I mean, hey, listen, the more things change, the more they stay the same, I suppose.
Can't wait.
Hey, I know you got to get your suit from the dry cleaner, so make sure it's all set for that Raw taping next month. But also on a lighter note, before I get into the WarGames Rant, I got to mention this as well. From SmackDown last Friday, the newly announced Women's United States Championship. So this would tell me that they're going to come out with a Women's Intercontinental Championship. That was not mentioned on Raw on Monday. No hint of it. I know they played up like all the talent from Raw wanting a piece of that Women's United States Championship. Women like Natalya and Sonya Deville tweeting that they want a shot at that championship, and however they determine the inaugural champion. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if they intended to make it co-branded from the get-go. They should. I think they can work towards having 2 women's mid-card titles, but we've talked about this a lot over the years, but specifically in recent months. There's been a lot of discussion about women's mid-card championships. My ideal hope was that they would get rid of the tag titles first. The tag titles aren't going anywhere. That's fine. It's not like I want less opportunities for the women thing. It's more of like those tag titles mean nothing thing. But to their credit, they've tried to make them mean more with Jade and Bianca holding them and defending them, so I'll give them credit there. But that being said, though, your initial thoughts, Mr. Marceau, I've already spoken about this elsewhere, but your initial thoughts on the Women's United States Championship coming soon to SmackDown and potentially Raw in the near future.
I like it. I think the title looks sharp. I think out of the 2, I prefer the United States title, so You kind of hinted at that before. I hope it's kind of co-branded. I think try the one title first, and then if it seems like there's need for a second, then do it. Don't have to, just because the men have two doesn't mean the women have to have two. So I think it's a perfect opportunity that we finally get a women's mid-card belt, defended both on Raw and SmackDown. I feel like it'd make it more prestigious and more people would want to go after it. You'd have more people to challenge for it because it's going over both brands. Then you can kind of like set up matches on both shows that kind of like either get contenders or stuff like that to like kind of like drum up interest to challenge for the belt. And I mean, overall, I think the title looks good. I love the United States title. And I think it should just be that for now. No Intercontinental for now. Like I said, if needed, they can always add on. But for now, I'd keep it one title defended on both brands.
Well, my next question was, and I think you kind of already mentioned this, you mentioned it looks sharp, but, a lot of, I say complaints, I'm not a fan of it either, but I'm not going to sit here and say, it's trash, if the belt design is fucking lazy, then I'll say it's fucking lazy. This is lazy, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. This is actually one thing I really don't care too much about. It's the same design as the Men's United States Championship, just with a white strap, which is what they do with all the other fucking titles. It's got the same name. Ideally, if they were going to do one women, even if they had two, I would still personally like to see it have a unique design and the unique name. Like, I know the Divas title was a butterfly belt, and that was trash, but, at least it was different than the men's belt, and it was a different name. It wasn't just like the the names that we have now for the women's belts in the main roster are fine, but for, the mid-card belts, I think you could get more creative. And they're not. It's the same thing. So, I was going to say, does that bother you, or you don't give a shit?
I don't think it really bothers me. I think it's kind of, maybe they're going, I think it's more just a branding thing. You see that belt, you know that's the United States title. Even if it's men's or women's, you see the white, okay, it's the women's title. You see it in the black, it's the men's title. I don't know, it's very UFC-esque. Like, even if you're the men's heavyweight UFC champion or the women's strawweight champion, your belt looks the exact same. The belt's the exact same. There's nothing different between the belt besides your fucking name on it.
Yeah,
I
guess so.
I think it's more like a branding thing. It's just like with NXT. Like, I actually really like the women's North American title, with the white strap on it. But I think overall, I don't hate it. Like I said, I think it's kind of more like they want to keep the brand awareness. Like I said, same with the women's titles on the main roster. They're the exact same as the men's, just with the white strap. So I don't have any issue. Like I said, I think it's just, I see it, I know exactly what it is. It's not like, oh, what's that belt? You kind of think about it, I know it's definitely United States.
Yeah, it's funny.
But I can see why people complain, though. Like you said, I think a unique design always is nice, but once it came out shitty, then people will be like, oh, it sucks. So I think you just stick with what people like.
Yeah, at least it's consistent, if nothing else. I appreciate the consistency. A uniqueness to it would have been nice, but it's not something I'll lose sleep over. It's not really that big of a deal, I think, but... it's funny you mentioned the UFC belts because I think the new NXT title belts actually look really nice, and not just because they look like UFC title belts, but I don't know. I don't know if the women's belt is the exact same one as the men's. I know in the past that has not been. I think it is now. I don't know if it's a white one with the men's one being a black strap. I don't know. But I think the UFC or the new NXT belts, which are UFC-esque, actually look really, really nice. All of them. The North American one, they didn't change. They shouldn't. I think that's a nice throwback belt. But the women's one is fine. It's got the white strap. Again, not a unique title, but it's the same thing, different color. Not that big of a deal. I was going to say who you think the inaugural champion should be from SmackDown. But if you also include Raw as well, that also expands the pot a little bit. So before I throw my own names out there, you might come up with the same ones.
GSM!
I'm going to put you on the spot, Mr. Marceau. Who do you think should walk away as the first ever Women's United States champion?
Oh, please edit this out. I might sound like the biggest idiot when this comes out. This person probably won't be. Kid always has to put me on the spot. This is a tough one. I can't believe you did this to me. First Women's United States champion. It's a great question. I think it should be someone that's over. I think it's someone that should be...
That eliminates 75% of the roster.
Eliminates a lot of people. That's true. That's a great question. It can't be a champion already because I think that would be just stupid.
Yeah.
So that eliminates a good amount of people. Fuck. I'm going to say...
It could be a couple names, too.
I'm going one. I'm a one and done guy. I'm not a couple names guy. Come on, what do I look like? A schlep? I'm going to say... Fuck, that's a tough question, DSM. I'm going to go with Io Sky.
Io Sky, even though it depends when they're going to crown this champion. They didn't say that it's going to be a tournament. They didn't say if it's going to be at Survivor Series, at fucking WrestleMania. They didn't say. But she is the number one contender for the Women's World Championship. So you're saying that she loses that, which I don't think she'll win anyway, which we talked about last week. But she'll win the United States title.
She just seems like someone that's over enough, credible, veteran. Like, she is world champion worthy, but we'll put the first belt on her to kind of like get other people over. The only other person I can think of is Natalya. No, thank you. I mean, I don't even think of anyone else like Tiffany. I wouldn't. Maybe Bayley, but even that, like Naomi, I guess. But
Naomi's a good pick.
I lean more towards. Yeah, first champion though. I don't love that. I'd probably lean more towards Bayley. You know what? I'll give you two: Bayley for SmackDown and Io Sky for Raw. There you go.
Bayley's a good name because she's established, but I would want someone newer. So you're telling me, I know you probably forgot about her, but you're telling me that you wouldn't want to see the belt initially on Charlotte Flair?
Can I drop this call right now? Or?
Come on,
honestly, she hits my requirements, so I wouldn't hate it.
I mean, it also would not add to her record either, so she would still be a fucking 15-time champion. I mean, they don't count the other titles.
I think either her, Bayley, or Io Sky, former women champions who are relevant within the last year or two. Makes sense, like I said, especially Charlotte, like whoever eventually beats her for it, like that's a huge rub, especially from Charlotte. Even Bayley, and I mean, Io's big too, but like, I mean, Charlotte, you beating Charlotte, that's a big rub. So
yeah,
I mean, I hope like Tiffany doesn't cash in the fucking briefcase for that. Don't even know why I just said that because that's stupid. But
what is she, Austin Theory?
Knowing this. But no, actually, I mean, Charlotte has to be coming back soon. So
yep.
I mean, it's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's I would rather I think it's more likely she comes back and faces either Nia or Tiffany because she's the queen and all this other shit. But it's a possibility. The other three names that I had in mind. Then? What'd you say?
So who do you pick then now, huh?
Well, I was going to say, so my three picks are actually three completely different people. Your criteria is better where you said. Well, I mean, I'm not saying my answers are better. I'm just saying, like, your answers were people.
No, I'm teasing.
Yeah, your answers are actually make sense because these are people that are over. These people that I'm saying are not nearly as over, but maybe the belt could get them over. The belt makes the person. It should be the other way around. But anyway, I was thinking Michin would be a good pick because she's never going to win the main title. She just won't. But I feel like that could be something that she could do. She had that feud with Chelsea Green and. That's also my second pick. Chelsea Green, I feel like would be a nice second pick. I don't really think that she'll ever be the WWE Women's Champion or the Women's World Champion, but she's entertaining enough. People like her enough. I feel like that would be a good role for her. If not the first champion, maybe the second champion. She could be like a fine pest champion, whatever, pest deal champion. The third pick, I'm honestly really surprised you didn't name her, but I think she stands out to me as someone that would make the most sense. Lyra Valkyria, what about her?
Yeah, no, I love Lyra a lot. She really hasn't even really been on Raw that much lately.
No.
So, I kind of like I said, I would rather have like I said, like Charlotte or Bayley or Io, and one of them being the champions, and like her beating one of them. So, like that would give her the rub to like beating a big person. Like I said, even with like if Michin won it, would people give a fuck? That's the thing. It's like I think you need someone over to like start it because if you put it on someone that's not over already, people are gonna be like, okay, like you just put a belt on someone that no one cares about. So that's why I'm going with more established people. Like I said, even Lyra, like, at least she's starting to get over. Like, if Tiffany didn't have the briefcase, I'd easily say her because I think she's over and, like, it would make sense and she's young and up and coming. But, even Lyra would be nice. Maybe one of the girls from NXT, if they called up someone like that, would make sense too. But, I think starting with someone established kind of puts the belt, Charlotte Flair's the United States. Oh, that means that's a big deal. If anyone even, like, wasn't watching wrestling and they turned on SmackDown one night, she was the Women's United States Champion. Holy shit. They have a new belt and Charlotte Flair's the champion? That must be a big deal.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's, like, the perception off the bat. So then, like, if you put on Michin, someone would be like, one, who is this? And two, this belt must mean nothing. That's my mindset. Why you put on someone that's over to start with.
So basically, what you're saying is that when the mob comes out, when Charlotte Flair wins this championship, are you going to be the one holding back the pitchforks and whatnot? Because you're going to have to be.
I'll defend it. Like the other same people, like I like Chelsea Green, but like I don't think she should be like the inaugural. I think like I said, maybe like down the line, but like you give her the belt. Like I said, like it's like giving like her or like Michin or like Sonya or one of them the title right off the bat. It's like people like be like, why? And people are like, oh, good for her, but like besides doing what they're doing now, they just have a belt around their waist. So like I said, they're not over. So it's like, I don't know. I think you need to put on someone established.
No, your logic makes sense. Your logic definitely makes sense.
Promising to become over. Like I said, at least Lyra like has like she like maybe like that could help like put her over a little bit because like she is over to a point, but like I said, those other people, I just like, Even like you said, even Naomi, like I wouldn't hate Naomi, but I would want someone more established.
Well, at least she's established and she's over. So I mean, I feel like she'd be a perfect fit for that criteria. That is also someone that hasn't held the main women's belt and not counting TNA in like 4 or 5 years. It's been a long time since she was last the main women's champion. I know she's getting a title shot next week or tomorrow on SmackDown, actually, as we speak right now. But still, I think it would be better if that makes sense, actually. I was saying all the people that I did, but I feel like you make a good point. I feel like it would mean more if it went on a Bayley or a Charlotte, for as tiresome as that might sound, as opposed to them, who they inevitably will hold that championship. I think people would like it more if they won it initially, and then Michin beats them, or Chelsea Green or whoever, as opposed to them being champion for like a month or two, and then Charlotte beats them, and then they're like fucking buried. So I feel like you're probably...
Exactly. That's another thing too, like them beating them's a bigger deal than them winning it first, and then them losing to one of those big stars.
Yeah. No, I think you're onto something there, and there's a whole host of options. I mean, even back in 2016, when they made the SmackDown Women's Championship, who did they put it on first? Becky Lynch. Now, she was not someone who was championed before, but she was established enough, and she was a good first champion. I mean, they could have put the belt on a Carmella or an Alexa Bliss, but they had Alexa Bliss beat Becky, and she benefited from beating Becky as opposed to becoming the first champion out of the gate. So... I don't know. I think you're onto something there, so I guess we'll see what they do. Still, again, like I said, no word on when they intend to crown the inaugural champion, how they intend to crown the inaugural champion, probably soon, probably a tournament, but they do a million fucking tournaments, so maybe they could switch it up and do something else.
Yeah, like imagine imagine Bayley won it, and like a month or two later, Chelsea Green beat her. Like it's like kind of similar to Becky and Alexa Bliss. Like I feel like Chelsea Green beating Bayley would like holy shit, like that kind of like prop her up a little bit.
Yeah, or even because she pinned her a couple of weeks ago in that tag match. I know she lost to her on SmackDown last week, but even Candice, I feel like Candice could be a good fit for that. I know, again, she's someone that's not really that over, but if she beats Bayley for the belt, that's not a bad idea, I don't think. I mean, she's another one to keep in mind.
That's true.
So, I don't know. There's a couple different women. I think overall, though, my top takeaway, our top takeaway, is that it's a positive development for the women's division. The tag team thing is what it is. Hey, maybe you can...
Only one belt, though, right? One belt.
For now. I think, too, at some point, I don't hate that idea, just because they have a lot of women. So, honestly, I don't... Honestly, if Raw and SmackDown are going 3 hours next year, first of all, fucking kill me. Second of all, I mean, it would make sense if they have 2 belts for both brands. Not each, obviously, but like one each. And that way we could see like an Alba Fire. I mean, God forbid ever get a push, but, maybe we could finally see someone like her rise up and challenge for a mid-card belt, because God forbid, again, they're going to have her challenge for the main women's championship. But, yes, I think we can agree 1 belt for now, right?
Yes.
I think that would make the most sense. Now, listen, we got to get to the elephant in the room here, WarGames. A lot has changed since we last spoke. We got Bloodline WarGames pretty much set in stone. I feel like we fast forwarded 10 fucking years since we last spoke a year ago, last week. They set up Roman, Sammy, and the Usos against Solo, the Tongans, and Jacob Fatu. At the end of SmackDown last week, they said, okay, WarGames, cool. They all threw up the ones, 4-on-4. Great. Awesome. Rush build, beyond fucking rushed. And again, I know like the complaint for a long time is, oh, it's taking too long. I think there is such a thing as finding the proper pace for this, and not... They're only rushing it because Survivor Series is in 2 weeks. If they didn't have WarGames attached to a certain fucking pay-per-view, they could be doing this in like January or December. I mean, that's the big takeaway there. That's the only reason why they're doing this as quickly as they are. 2 months ago, Roman was on his own. And 2 months later, he's with Sammy, Jay, and Jimmy. He has made up with all 3 of them, and they're all of a sudden on the same page, even though Roman has not apologized once, but whatever. So that is that. The rushing thing is what it is. But now they're adding in 5... they're making it 5-on-5. They're adding in 2 more people, 1 to each team. Now, I know next week's Raw, I haven't read the spoilers. I don't want to know the spoilers. I guess that's an indicator they spoiled who might be joining the teams. I honestly don't even really, I don't even honestly even really care. I don't care who it is. It could be Rollins. I know they teased that on Monday. It could be the fucking Rock for all we know, which I think would be fucking stupid. Just because why would you have Rock and Roman? Like, Rock's not going to team with them, and if he does, just, I don't know. Less is more here. I'll keep it short. I'll throw it to you, Mr. Marceau. What do you take on this? Do you give a shit? Are you annoyed by it? Where do you stand on this whole thing?
I mean, depending on who the fifth people on each team is, I think depending on who it is, I think it could go either way. Like, I don't hate the idea, depending on who it is. I think it kind of, like, with the 4 and 4, I think, like, yeah, I know it's traditionally 5 and 5, but I think with the story, the 4 and 4 works.
Correct.
But like you said, like, if, like, Rollins joins Roman's team and Rock's on Solo's team, okay, I don't hate it. If it's Rollins and, like, I don't know, Bronson Reed, which I don't know what the fucking correlation would have to do with the other bloodline, besides, like, they need another guy in both teams, so they just grabbed Rollins and Reed and threw him in. Like, wouldn't love that idea, just because Reed has no affiliation with the bloodline at all. At least Rollins, like, it makes sense. Like, he was a team of Roman, Jay, Sammy. Okay, we can kind of get there. And then if The Rock was on the other side, okay, last time we saw Rollins, like, him and Roman were, like, whatever. You could kind of, like, make it work with Rock and Rollins. Rollins and Reed would just be like, we need to keep this going, so we're just going to throw them in there. Especially with Reed, because at least Rollins, okay, it makes a little sense. Reed's just, like, just feuding with Rollins. He's just going to toss him in. It would kind of be stupid. And most likely, knowing them, he'd be the one eating the pinfall if he was in that. Somehow.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think...
Like,
no,
not tongue alone. I know, let's have fucking Reed lose, because why not?
He already lost him once before. They're having a rematch on Raw next week. So honestly, at this point, why the fuck not? Why not just have him get pinned in WarGames? No, I think that would be ridiculous. Why do that when you can just have them have another match? I know they're having a match on Raw this week, but maybe it's a no contest or they set up a third match at the pay-per-view. There is zero reason for Seth Rollins to be on that team. I know, like, the Shield shit, I get it. But for Rollins to go from fucking hating Roman's guts and being like, I want to stomp his head in, which is literally what he said on Raw this week, to a week later being like, you know what, I'll team with you. What does he even get out of it? Like, he has no issue with the current bloodline. I know he's never liked the bloodline, but he has no issue with the current bloodline.
It's booked on the pay-per-view.
That is just, but then have him face Reed separately. You know, that's the other issue. Like, just do that. I know it would be a star-studded match, and if that's what people are looking at, like, oh, this is going to be such a sexy match, like it's a fucking 2K24 match, like, cool, dude. But, like, they are wasting, in my opinion, and again, I'm complaining here, I get it, but they are wasting, like, 6 or 7 massive fucking moments, just, like, throwing it out within a month. Like, Jay reuniting with Roman was a big moment, but, like, then they gave Jimmy reuniting with Roman away. Like, they gave all this shit away within, like, a month. Like, they could have just spread this out over the course of, like, 3 months, at least, if not more than that. And, I don't know, to give it away for a WarGames match, which 4-on-4, like, again, they had to rush to get to that, cool. But, like, if it's Rollins teaming with either team, he has no issue, like, he has no correlation with any of them. I know with Roman Reigns, he has history, but like you said, he spent so long trying to take down Roman Reigns. Why the fuck would he team with him? Just because Bronson Reed's on the other team? That's ridiculous. That is fucking stupid. I'm sorry. They can build to Roman and Rollins reuniting at some point down the road is the key here. But having him team with Roman on a 2-week notice for a match that, by the way, does not matter. There's nothing on the line here. It's not like he gets a title shot out of it. He doesn't want to get his hands on Roman. Like, if he wanted to get his hands on Roman, like we saw at Mania this year, like, he teamed with Cody because he hated Roman Reigns. Like, that made sense. I know Rollins' role in the whole thing was kind of shoehorned in there, but it made sense. To go from that to then teaming with him 6 months later, I know Cody just teamed with him, and also Cody, by the way, would be a fucking terrible option. Get him the fuck away from the bloodline. He should face Owens on that show.
I was just going to say,
no
what's worse,
thanks.
Rollins or Cody with them?
Cody is not the worst option, obviously, but, like, that would be even worse. He should be facing Owens on that show. We can't go another pay-per-view without him defending his championship. He's got to defend on that show, and it's got to be Owens. After the angle they did with Randy Orton and Kevin Owens last week. That is the absolute dumbest fucking thing. So if you eliminate Rollins, which makes no sense, which they'll probably do, and then you eliminate Cody, I'm not even really sure who's left at that point. The Rock? Is he not promoting Moana 2? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think so. As far as, like, I don't think he would make... I have said I guarantee you he will not wrestle on that show. Why would he risk an injury in fucking WarGames? And if he was on Team Bloodline with Solo, again, that's another moment wasted. You can build The Rock turning on Roman, which we have not seen yet. When he returned to Bad Blood, there was no hint of dissension. You could kind of read between the lines with him, you know, being aligned against Roman and being with the new Bloodline. But there's no confirmation of that. So people are trying to tell me, oh yeah, Rock will come back at Survivor Series and wrestle with Solo. Why? Why would you throw that away? Like, you're going to give away Roman and Rock in a fucking WarGames match? That's stupid. That would just, and also Roman's team should probably win. So then Rock's going to lose. Again, what's the point of that? That's just dumb.
Roman, like you said, I mean, I guess at this point, then, okay, so no Rock, then I guess it's got to be Rollins and Reed then, because then no one else would make sense. I mean, Reed doesn't make sense either, but, like...
No.
That's the only thing else that would, like, at least if Rollins is for the other team, like, you'd have to put Reed at that point. Hey, maybe Roman fucking, or Dwayne says he's the fucking last heir of the Anoa'i family, you put Reed with him. I have fucking no idea, because realistically it makes no fucking sense. Like, he is, I don't know what his fucking descent is, he's close enough, make it work. He's the fucking Samoan Yokozuna at this point, who fucking cares, but... I mean, like I said, regardless, it doesn't make sense. You should have kept their 4-4 unless Rock was in it. Like you said, it would be rushed and make no sense, but at least there'd be some correlation. Putting Reed in it with Rollins is just like, we want to get them in the match, and we'll just do it. Because like you said, what would Rollins get out of, what does Rollins get out of it? Like, does he have issues with Solo and the other guys? Not to my knowledge, he doesn't. And like you said, he's facing Reed on Raw. I mean, unless fucking Solo goes and fucking kills fucking Becky and their kid, I mean, and Rue, I mean, I don't really know what else would really make him want to team with them. So, I mean, losing a match or getting attacked, like, maybe, but does that even, like you said, it doesn't really, like make up for all the things Roman did. Like you said, the last time we saw Rollins and Roman, they were fighting each other at WrestleMania, and Rollins was getting hit with a steel chair. So how is it just like, all of a sudden he's fucking, everything's hunky-dory again? I don't know. That's a long rant. Like, I don't, like, hate, like I said, I'm not in love with it, but I'm not, like, hating it, but, like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And this also just reverts the back. That's why you don't do, hey, it's November, let's dust off WarGames.
Exactly.
Fucking dumb.
Exactly. I think that's the main point I'm trying to make here. I know we've said that a million times, but now it's at a point where it's just actively hurting the story. I know that this is the third year they've done it on the main roster. It was awesome when they first did it. The Bloodline match when we went 2 years ago was great. The women's match, I think it was Damage Control, like against a bunch of random other people. Like, okay, that made sense. That was cool. It was a good match or whatever. The women's match last year didn't make as much sense, but again, they had Damage Control. They were like 5 women at that point. That made sense. Okay, cool. The men's match last year was fine. It was like Judgment Day against a whole bunch of other people. That was fine. Good match, cool, fun match. But again, we get to a point where like the men's match this year makes sense. It doesn't make sense to do in November. At the rate that they're progressing the story, you could have easily waited to do it in December, January, instead of in fucking Elimination Chamber. Get rid of Elimination Chamber, do WarGames, or do Elimination Chamber. I don't know, you can't do both, obviously, because you can't do a chamber match and then, 2 rings for WarGames, I guess. I don't know. They want to make Survivor Series mean something. So they want to attach the gimmick to that show specifically. But if you can't find people that make sense, then don't fucking do it. I mean, what are they going to throw Hikuleo on Team Bloodline within 2 weeks? They're going to debut him and put him in WarGames? That makes no sense. On the babyface team. Again, I have all these people telling me, like, oh, you got to wait until Raw next week to see that it's what the spoilers are. We'll find out on Monday. I mean, I haven't read the spoilers. That's the whole point. It hasn't aired yet. So I'm not going to go off of fucking spoilers if it hasn't happened yet. But, like, even if it's like, say, for example, CM Punk. Why the fuck would CM Punk team with Roman Reigns against the Bloodline? He has no bearing with any of them. That makes zero sense. Like, honestly, any option that you throw out there makes fucking no sense. Like, Sami Zayn, you can say, okay, he even said it himself. He had a special time with the Bloodline. He had a bond with them. He's not family, but he, had a great time with them a couple of years ago. Rollins, this guy's, he's made this man's life miserable, has not had a fun time with Roman in like 10 fucking years. I mean, that's just stupid. I just don't understand what the point of that is. And I think moreover than anything, why is it that the storyline is like, oh, we got to find a fifth man? Why? Did Nick Aldis tell you had to find a fifth man? Did the rules dictate that you have to find a fifth man? There were plenty of WarGames matches in NXT where it was 3-on-3-on-3 or 4-on-4. The whole 5-on-5 thing, I don't understand why they can't just tweak it to make it 4-on-4. There's no reason why it has to be 5-on-5.
Steve Rollins and Reed need to get on the show. That's the only thing I can think of. Like, that's the only reason it makes sense, and it's fucking dumb.
It's ridiculous, dude. I just don't get it. And again, I'm sure the match will be great, because people were trying to tell me, like, oh, it's going to work out. Let it play. I hate the let it play out shit. Like, if it makes sense, like,
let it play out, GSM.
That is the biggest cop-out fucking answer of all time. And I'm the first one to say, like, okay, I see the vision here. I get it. You got it. Like, when, you know, like, for example, when Owens and Zayn hadn't reunited until close to Mania, we got to let it play out. They're going to get to it at some point. With Rey attacking Dominic, they're going to get to it at some point. The Usos shit was not good, but, like, they're going to get to that match at some point, and they did. This is not a let it play out thing. This is, I think it's fucking stupid that regardless of whether it's God himself or anyone on that team, it's going to be dumb. There is no reason for it. I think people are missing the point here. There is no reason for it to be 4-on-4. The only thing I can think of that is more unnecessary is a women's WarGames match. And that is my next point. What is the point of doing women's WarGames? I know we discussed this last week, dude, but like, they're doing a women's WarGames match. They didn't outright announce it yet. But, like, they clearly set one up on Raw this week. Unless they're doing an elimination tag team match, which would be great, and that makes perfect sense. If it's a women's WarGames, you can count me the fuck out. That is an absolute joke. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I think it's kind of the problem with this. The problem is, like, nowadays, everything has to be 50-50, which I don't know why, but it just is what it is. But, I mean, I don't think there's any reason that we should have a women's WarGames. I think I'm fine with the elimination match. But then, you know, there's going to be people complaining, oh, the women didn't have WarGames. Well, too fucking bad. There's not a story there. There's no reason to have the women's WarGames. Just do a 5-on-5, and we'll be fine. I think I'd be fine with the 5-on-5 elimination. WarGames would just be stupid because it's literally like it would be a mixture of just random women just teamed up together. Like, it's just dumb. No, thank you.
Liv and Nia just had a match 2 weeks ago, and they're supposed to team on the same team. Why? What is the point of that? Bianca has never liked Io Sky. Why would they be on the same team? That makes no fucking sense. They just had a match a couple of weeks ago. They were rivals up until literally Monday. What is the point of having them team? That is just completely fucking stupid. And they didn't. The weird thing is, you mentioned the 50-50 thing. Like, with the Rumble and the other shit, I get it, honestly. Like, I understand. I get it, because, you know, those matches have stakes. These other matches don't have stakes. They're just doing it for no reason. And like when Hell in the Cell, when they were doing that shit, and they were doing that every year, which it was like it demeaned the match and whatnot, they didn't even do a women's match every year. They did one like when it made sense, but they wouldn't do a men's match and a women's match inside the cell. They would do too many Hell in the Cell matches, and those would sometimes be unnecessary. But even then, they didn't do a men's match and a women's match. I don't understand why we need to have a men's match and a women's match every year on the same show if it does not make sense to do one. This year more than any other year. Even if Rhea Ripley was around, it still would be fucking stupid. If Rhea Ripley's involved, if she comes back or something, even then it's dumb. This does not make sense. I mean, again, the matches I'm sure will be great. We'll be talking about it and raving about it in 2 weeks when we review the show. But as of right now, the build-up is a mess, and it just further demeans the concept when, at this point, they got to get rid of it or do it at a different time. I cannot stress that enough.
No, I think the women, there shouldn't be one, honestly.
There should not be one. I completely agree. But listen, brother, we'll save more of this rant for next week. Well, let's see how it plays out, right? We'll see how it plays out on Monday night. We'll see how it plays out tomorrow on SmackDown, what they have in mind. I'm sure fucking, you know, it's going to be some miraculous, I can't wait for this miraculous reveal on Monday's Raw that's going to somehow justify them doing this 5-on-5 for the men and doing the women's one at all. I think both I have an issue with, but we'll get to it next week. New episodes every week on Thursdays on WrestleRant.com, WrestleRantRadio.com. Have a great one, brother. Enjoy the weekend, and I'll catch your ass down the road, dude.
See you later.
Join Graham, GSM Matthews, and RJ Marceau every Thursday as they run down their weekly wrestling rants, offer expert analysis, host exclusive interviews, and more. Subscribe today on all your favorite podcast platforms and never miss an episode of WrestleRant Radio.